as a space that's queer all year, certainly we have the opportunity to provide a safe space, I think, 12 months a year. But it's certainly something that's continually growing and evolving, and we're constantly learning. I know some of the ways that we have expanded our safe space training for at least our staff in recent months was we had a partnership in the fall with the Sexual Assault Center to have some disclosure training and bystander intervention policies put into place for all the staff and for some of our show producers. When you talk about people being able to be seen and reflected in this space, that's something that we're also super passionate about. And I know one of the ways that we try to do that is by having events and showcases that are reflective of some of the different aspects that maybe tend to get ignored in mainstream cis white gay culture, which sometimes we see far too much of here in the space. But we do try to do events that uplift other groups. Like we had a Sapphic show recently. We've got a Filipino show coming up. We've got an Indigenous show coming up. This Thursday, we have one of our bi-monthly showcases of BIPOC talent. So they're just small ongoing ways that we can show our commitment to uplifting the minorities within our already minority community.
Yeah, thank you for touching on that. Like, I definitely think this, like, that including that intersectional perspective, and like when you know your staff maybe doesn't have as much experience with that, including training for those times. I mean, truly, I've worked in the bar industry like since I was 15, so most places need this kind of training. It should be like standard for all places to have that kind of like bystander training and that conversation, at least that openness of it helps when things do come up and you inevitably do have to have conversations. But it is huge. Yeah, I mean, you run the only gay bar we have in Edmonton now, and we do live in Alberta. It's a spicy place for all of us. So I love the pop-up feel, both of Saphiric and like Fruit Loops. You both have like really, it's beautiful to be able to queer a space. But I think, as I do hope, just kind of pivoting to the future point, I do hope that we can have more year-round spaces for our folks here, and it is just a triumph to keep it going in Alberta. So you're killing it. But who else is on our panel? I think James is on our panel also. No, you're just here looking lovely. I love it. I think that is all of us, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, okay, great. So let's pivot, to the future. Hopes for the future of queer spaces, and what that looks like. I mean, they have a lesbian bowling bar in Montreal. I'd love that. I just want it for the looks. I just want it for a jacket. Just for that. But in all seriousness, we started Queer Time Tuesday at SAMU. And we're doing it off campus because I want it to be something for the rest of our community. But my manager, Macy, is also queer, and she's lived in the States for a long time. And we were having a big talk about spaces. And she's like, Amelia, I know Canada's more chill, but I swear there's more going on in America for us. I'm like, oh no, we got to get on it then. Oh gosh. But I brought her this idea of just having queer literature available so people can read about their community. I think so much of like the jargon that we interact with about like topics like, say, intersectionality and like race-based conversations and stuff around queerness are often on the online sphere, and sometimes you don't get that context of like what they're referencing, and seeing it in academic literature or in novels felt for me like a way to connect it and show it's like not this like weird insular online thing. These conversations have been going on for a long time. So We recently just started Queer Time Tuesday, and the hope is for it to be the last Tuesday of every month at Dirtbag Cafe, but then we can expand it to other locations. And I focused in, yeah, on literature because I'm a big nerd, but what's everybody else's hopes for the future? I'll go in the same order. So we'll go back to Sean.
Sure. I mean, it would be lovely to have more full-time queer spaces, like Evo or any, maybe we're down to just Evo, and I hope that we can get more, whether they're bars, cafes, whatever. Fruit Loop will be making a return to in-person events soon-ish. So that will sort of help with adding some additional queer spaces in the city. But yeah, I mean, it's shocking to me to think, back when I was young and in the bar scene, there was like 4 queer bars at one point. I mean, Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's definitely some choices back in the years ago. So it's bizarre to me to think that our population keeps growing, the city keeps growing, and our queer spaces for some reason are going in the opposite direction. So we will get to work on that.
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I think in my time, and I'm a little bit older than Sean, I think we maxed out at 8 gay bars in Edmonton at one point in like 2003.
Yeah.
And they were often packed on like a Monday night or a Thursday night, right? Like we're talking like lineups to get into to queer dance space. And I don't really know why it would have changed that while it's getting increasingly accepting and everything, that there's a reduction in queer space. And I think partly it's because I think back in 2003, when there was 8 spaces, there was not straight venues that were queer accepting or safe at all. Whereas now there weren't pop-up events, there weren't drag shows at straight bars, there weren't brunches, or there weren't just places where you could go 7 days a week that were not maybe exclusively or explicitly queer. But so there weren't places like that where you could go where you weren't in danger. Whereas now I think there are so many venues in the city that that are welcome and affirming, and I guess that's shown by groups like Sapphic and Fruit Loop and some of the groups that Party Queens does events at. They're doing events, and so those spaces end up becoming safe spaces all the time, just because they do have that. So just because this is a venue that has these pop-up events, but yes, you don't need to just come to those pop-up events here. They are safe spaces all the time, that wasn't a thing, I guess, when there was more venues.
Yeah, and I will say for sure, some of our partner venues for Fruit Loop have definitely seen an uptick on their queer patronage, I guess, for lack of a better term. I think it really helps that venue to sort of show to the community saying, hey, we are all inclusive, even though we are categorized as a regular bar or a straight bar. And, from a business owner perspective, that's really important. What is your label? Do you want a label? How do you show the masses that you are all inclusive? Is the term gay bar becoming a thing of the past? Like, what's the identifier for a friendly queer space when it comes to places like bars and pubs? So it's interesting to see how venues are starting to pivot, and even as much as hanging a rainbow flag in their front entrance. It could just be as small as that, but that goes such a huge way with the community to say, okay, I think we're good here.
Truly. I think it does. Sometimes I do worry if it's performative, but the fact that it's even like something that people are thinking about doing for a business point of view, like, is at least miles ahead of like where we were like 25, 30 years ago. So, and I've actually, Rob, I have heard Brian, who teaches human sexuality at the school, I've heard him mention that like that's definitely one of the reasons why we have less gay bars than we did a few years ago, was because there is like more crossover in other spaces, and yeah, it's not as insular, it's safer to go to other spaces. So that is a win in so many ways, but also not in others. I don't know. But yeah, so Tracy, we'll move to Tracy. You have one of the only queer like shops, and as a person who shops for drag king things, it is definitely not always the most comfortable time sometimes. So also a very important thing to not just have the social, but also the bodily other thing, queer things. That wasn't the best way to say that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm just thinking about what I'd like to see for the future. And I think that I'd like to see more queer youth inclusive spaces, and maybe even some for those of us who are like, on the 50 plus, and like we're not all into the bar scene. And my kids are queer. I'd love to be able to take them into a space where we can all see ourselves reflected as well. And there's precious few events that are all, I mean, there are some, but I'd love to see more range, more diversity in those kinds of spaces, because I tell you, the kids have so much language that we didn't have when I was a kid for gender expression and sexuality expression, that yeah, there's just so much to embrace right now. And yeah, there's definitely, I think, we work with a lot of youth, and we work with a lot of youth who don't have accepting families. So maybe there's a way that we can support those kids as well, where they wouldn't have opportunity to have access to spaces like that, and just know that they're loved and seen and heard. It's important.
Yeah, I love that. The families bit is huge. Like queer families exist. They're there. We're out here. So making spaces for that, that was part of my intention with Queer Time Tuesday, because I do have some friends who have younger queer folks, and they want to, yeah, just where can we go and like have a coffee and hang out and meet people and read about things. And I had right after Jason Kenney got elected, I was in the I know I was dying inside, and we had I was in Jasper Pride with Fruit Loops, and we went down and we found out that the local GSA was going to be able to watch the performance of Stop in their own like little space. And we went up and met them, and it was like right when everything, a large part of his platform was saying like about GSAs and how they have to tell parents and blah 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 blah. And like, oh, we just like went up there and chatted with the kids, and it was just like it reaffirmed to me like why I'm doing this stuff. Like it's hard for me, but I get to vote. Like I have a say in a lot of these things, and these little littles don't. So hard for my heart. Thank you for mentioning the families. Yeah, queer families and making family spaces is a big one. Beautiful. Love it. Safirik.
Well, I have lots of things to say on this topic, and I'm sure you do too, Kina. Would you like to go first? What I would say, hopes and dreams for the future. Because the arts is really important to me. So it would be amazing to have more platforms and showcase more diverse artists. I would love to see more queer poetry nights. I would love to see more queer open mic nights, queer, just acoustic nights. It's not just nights, but you know what I mean? Like just varied. And because I think it's really important for queer artists to know that they can share their art, but at the same time not have to be worried about their authentic self, So I would love to see that. Also, it would be amazing too to I don't know, create more platform for trans, non-binary folk. It's amazing to see that there's more of that now, but really to elevate you know, all of them would be amazing. Yeah, so that would be like my hopes and dreams for sure. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think with a lot of our followers assume that I identify as someone who is sapphic, and I don't. I chose the name because I love people who are sapphic, and I think they don't get enough, airtime. But a lot of what I would like to see as well is a focus on non-binary and trans, as well as I think like I agree with Tracy a lot on having more events that are like family friendly, or like, you're able to bring your, little ones with you to an event versus having events where you can't do that. So that's something that hopefully in the future we're going to try to incorporate. But yeah, I think for the future, I hope to see a lot, because the community is so diverse and we have so much to offer and there's so much beauty in all of it. I hope to see a lot more of all of it. Yeah.
Yay, awesome. Thank you, Ken and Britton. Yeah, you're right. I feel like it could be lots of really fun, beautiful events, all of our horizon of different minds coming in and bringing in that creativity. Yeah, and I also agree. I think as popular culture is getting more comfortable with confronting the fact that gender is not a binary. I'm also a gender minor, so this is just my time. It's like we're having the language for it. So as the language becomes more popular, like more dominant, then I don't know. I do see it coming though. You can see this big gap, as Tracy mentioned. These littles do just have like a lot of understanding that I definitely didn't when I was younger, and even just like 25, 30, 40 years, it's really changed a big time. So yeah, as we grow those bits, we're also going to be able to have these wonderful events come up. And Rob, I'll move to you.
Oh, what are my hopes and dreams for the future? I mean, I hope that people, I guess, show more appreciation and support for the spaces that they have before they go away, for whether those spaces are like permanent brick and mortar stuff like us, or pop-up events that are happening wherever they're happening. Sometimes things might not be perfect, but work with them to change. Like I know we're very approachable if we're not putting on an event that is what you're looking for. Just bring us an idea, and then we'll do it. Like we certainly can't be everything to everyone all the time. That's not possible. And whenever we've tried that in the past, it ends up being a fail. I'd love to see a little gay pub or a little gay coffee shop. I know I'm still kind of old school. I like the label. I want to know. I do think we're getting to a point where gay bars might be a little anachronistic, but for people visiting from out of town, they need to know that that's where they can go. They're not going to know the straight affirming spaces. Or for kids just coming out, being able to go to that space where they're in the majority for their first time in their lives, and like be completely surrounded by their own peeps. That's a feeling that is pretty wonderful, and we need to keep going. I know for the venue, we're going to continue to try to become the best queer space that we can. We've been super blessed to work with groups like Quilt Bag and Fruit Loop and Sapphic Speakeasy, doing stuff in the space, and just keeping the community as diverse as possible. So, at the end of the day, we are a nightclub. So we can't be everything for everyone. We've done some all ages family events when we can, but that requires us suspending our license with AGLC. It's not super easy. We've done the street festival that had an all ages component. I don't think that that's going to be happening again this year, but from what I hear, there is a Pride Parade coming back in June, so hopefully we've got that to look forward to. We'll see what happens there, I guess. I'm not really sure about the people that are putting it on, so I don't know much about it. But certainly June is the month where you really have to look for that performative aspect, though. The people or the places that all of a sudden have a gay event during Pride Week, and then don't have anything else for the other 11 months of the year. It's something to watch for.
100%.
Yeah, and just to echo sort of what Rob is saying, I know with Fruit Loop, we've definitely looked at and tried to figure out how we can do more events that are family friendly or youth focused. And some of the challenges we face with that is where do we have those events? Because Fruit Loop's formula has just been basically in nightclubs and bars for 18 plus. There's definitely been people asking for that. And I love that, Rob, you did like some all ages drag nights. Like, I think that was super cool. I'd be curious to know what your turnout was for that or what feedback you got from that. We got put on a few years back, we got put on a GSA list for just references and just for kids that are in school that want to just look for groups and connect or whatever. And we got some pretty harsh criticism and attacks just from some religious groups and Parents for Choice, places like that, saying that we were not the type of group that should be that kids should be accessing our website or our page for education or whatever. And so we've had to sort of tread lightly on our involvement with youth, because we often get we get attacked for it. So navigating that, yes, it's something we want to do. How we do it, I think we just have to, work with the community a bit. And Rob, I'd love to pick your brain as well as how you approach that and what your turnout and the feedback was from that.
Yeah, I think we've done 5, maybe 6 all ages drag events in the house. Now it's challenging because when you suspend your liquor license, which we have to do because of the license that we have, it has to be for a full 24 hours. So we can't do like a Saturday afternoon and then reopen as a dance club Saturday night. So that does kind of shuffle those events to like a Monday or Tuesday when we're not doomed revenue wise, because obviously without being able to sell liquor, there's no revenue for those events. So they're just kind of operating at a loss for us, but they've been absolutely magical. Like having 100 people down, but having like 2-year-olds on the dance floor with their parents, because like either queer parents bringing their kids to something or supportive parents bringing their queer kids to something. They don't really get the opportunity to engage in a venue like ours ever. So we're really looking forward to being able to do a couple of those again. But yeah, we had like 100 people and probably kids from 2 on dancing with their parents, some underage drag performers, there are ways legally to even have them in normal nights, but it can be a bit challenging. Parental permission and you need pre-approval from AGLC. But we had drag performers, I think as young as 12 on the stage during those shows. So it's super amazing. I know when Party Queens is able to resume their park shows in the summer, that was, I don't know if everybody knows, Party Queens is a drag organization in the city, and during the pandemic, so the summer of 2020 and 2021, they did outside shows at parks. And I think they're planning on continuing that just because there isn't, so that's an opportunity for families to do something. So I think that's something that certainly us and Fruit Loop and Sapphic and Quilt, like we can all get behind supporting and then just kind of let them grow organically.
Yeah, I love it. Great ideas. Two things. So I do agree, like, yeah, we need to keep the gay nightclubs. I love dancing. I've always loved dancing. Now, before I got paid to dance, I'd be dancing. Even as a kid, I do remember like going to some like reggae things when my with my mom when I was younger. And I just loved it. You just put the headphones on for the little ears and you go on in. But yeah, space is a big thing. Space, as we started the conversation, like venues and spaces to do things in, it has to be feasible for them. It has to be sustainable for us to be able to cultivate something that's going to grow. And yeah, suspending your license all the time is not always a doable thing. And the second thing, yes, because queerness encompasses gender and sexual queerness, the sexual aspect of that, people can get very heated about younger folks having access to certain content, which I do think is fair. But at some point we do have the internet, and I don't think I can trying to think of like what on Fruit Loop's website would truly be like overly I'm probably there. I'm like, I should check what pictures are there that are like, because I really don't think it'd be all that surprising, depending on the age range that's being shared with.
I
Okay,
remember what it was if you want to know.
what was it?
I worked in schools at that time. I was still teaching. And honestly, all it was some like sweaty hard bodies with not a lot of clothing on them. I think it was just an ad, but the response, and I didn't know you, Sean, yet. It all happened at the same time as some other things from the Alberta Teachers Association, and you folks were caught in the crossfires. Unfortunately, gay panic. And it was actually all my fault. So I want to apologize because I don't know if you remember the PRISM toolkit for secondary, the teacher resource that was written that kicked off the whole thing. I wrote it. I'm sorry. But if it makes you feel any better, I made it onto Fox News for that guide. So we've all had brushes with grossness. And I will mute again.
Yeah, I think it was like a resource list, wasn't it, for GSAs or something? Yeah, that we made it on, and which fine, we did, that was great, but somehow a group, and I want to call it Parents for Choice, I could be wrong on that, but they're very much against GSAs in the first place. And we got targeted, like just the inbox, it was just coming. So somehow they I think had scrolled through our Facebook feed for months and months and months back to find the most like controversial posts, which apparently was an underwear ad. I don't even remember that. And then, yeah, it was like full on message after message saying like, it was just really very much an aggressive attack. And so we had never dealt with that before. And we were just starting to say, we're getting requests for more family programming and youth programming. How do we do that? And then that happened and we're like, oh, okay, this is something new that we have to navigate and tread lightly on and really sort of, chat with our fellow community partners to see how we can navigate this, because I guess parents, it's a delicate topic and they want to know what their kids are accessing, and I totally understand that, but at the same time, all it would have taken was a little bit of homework as to what Fruit Loop is all about and what we do, to know that we're not some shady organization. So we have been a little bit reluctant to do some youth programming, but it's definitely something that we keep circling back on. And as Rob mentions, the Party Queens park events were an absolute delight. So many families and kids out there. So I think if we could try to work together to do something like that year round, not just in the summer months, to help facilitate that, Fruit Loop would be more than happy to help with that. I think it's important, and I think the youth deserve it. They want to be in on the action. They want to see drag and burlesque and be a part of the community and not have to wait until they're 18 years old. So yeah, sign us up. We'd happily collaborate.
Woo, I love it. Yes. And yeah, and I'm curious if adding the younger ones and getting their feedback, what our events would look like, like what would the kids had to say, like what would be the kids, they're like the younger ones. If I wonder what would come about, like I'm sure it'd be a lot of different creative ideas, and they'd have a lot of solutions that we wouldn't have thought of because we haven't had our whole lives to have as much rhetoric for these things. So yeah, I love it. Jessica, you hopped in. Do you want to share your future dreams other than Fox News? Terror.
Yeah, I mean, I consider that one like a peak achievement to be discussed on Fox News as someone who's destabilizing Western society. I mean, that's an honor, right?
It is. Those family values,
Yeah.
straights have perfect family
Yeah,
values.
exactly.
It's all us.
So yeah, sorry again, Sean, I'll have to buy you a beer sometime. But thank you, Amelia. I didn't really expect today to speak, but so I am the program coordinator for the Center for Sexual and Gender Diversity on campus at MacEwan. And so Pride Week is my rainbow baby that I have foisted upon the world. And because our center is new, we're figuring out how we want to occupy space on campus, and then what we want that space to be like for people to come to, because there's that balance of sort of, it is an institution, and some institutions can be a source of oppression, and how do we function within them to create those spaces that people need. And so the pandemic, here's your silver lining, the pandemic actually has given us a lot more time to be reflective on that, because we didn't have access to campus space. And now we're in the Roundhouse, if you're familiar with campus at all. We have a suite of 4 small offices, and we have a student lounge that we're building. And our whole approach to what we want this space to be is that it feels like you're coming home. That one queer auntie that you had, that you knew you could go to, or just the really cool auntie, doesn't even matter if they're queer, that you have a soft place to land, and that you have a place where you can visit, and it's just like a manifestation of your chosen family, and that people need that. And I heard feedback from a student this week, I think they're actually here, that coming from out of town, a more rural location, and coming to school in the big city, that you don't have those family members. And so we need to find them and create space where we can gather. And that's a lot of the intention behind what we're doing with our spaces for campus. And I want all of those really creative things to come and take place here. All that creativity, we want the space to be yours. And I'm really excited to co-create that with folks, because that's what it's about, right? And I think that's what I'm hearing from all of you, is that these spaces are co-created. No one can just decide that a space is safe, that there's that responsibility and that accountability that we bring with us all the time too, as keepers of spaces. And there's a lot of pressure that's involved in that, I think, because you're doing it from a heart space as well as a business space. But that only increases our duty of care to one another. And I think that's really excited. And I think that we need more conversations like this, and talk about the different kinds of spaces we need, and what needs to be present in them. I think once we're able to better articulate those things, that our visions for the future are far more attainable than we ever realized. So I could wax poetic about it all day, but I'm just really grateful that people are willing to come and talk about these things and the challenges, because it's not always straightforward. I mean, obviously, nothing about us is straight, but sorry, I just need a little drum kit, but I'm just, yeah. So I think that this is, the space starts with a conversation. It just starts with a connection, and that this is where we're at.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I know you didn't expect to, but since you are opening that space in the school and it's pretty new, it is, I think it's, we didn't, because Inquiries didn't have a space. So it's the first time, yeah, there's a queer space on campus. And it is, yeah, it's coming out of a business kind of area. So it'll be cool to have it in Roundhouse with other sustainable businessy things. I'm curious. I'm very excited just to like hang out and have tea there, like you said. It is that family aspect, and because so many folks come into Edmonton, I mean, as much as like Alberta can be hard, Edmonton is like the Austin. It's the Austin. It's cool. We got people coming in. We're more like liberal. The NDP have spots here. That's what's up. But like it's definitely a space that people come in from. Like Rob mentioned, like when you're traveling and you're going somewhere else, you want to come in and you want to be able to like find those spots where you know it's going to be safe. And the more that we can cultivate that is huge. Tracy, I saw that you unmiked yourself. Did you have something you thought of?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, kind of in response to Jessica, that there have been some excellent spaces created with the Indigenous Flag group with Lana Whiskey Jack and Roxanne Tatusis. And they managed to create a great space for people to gather as well. And so, it's there, and hopefully somebody else is carrying Roxanne's torch now, because she was just such a wonderful person to the Two-Spirit community. But yeah, more spaces like that would be great.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That was can you repeat the name of the center again? Sorry.
Well, the Indigenous Flag group with Lana
Flag,
Whiskey
great.
Jack and at the time Roxanne Tatusis. I'm not sure, with the pandemic, we haven't really had gatherings at all.
Yeah. I think they're working on it. Roxanne, for folks who don't know, was an amazing knowledge keeper who recently passed in September, who worked at Aki Watson in the school. And I met Roxanne to ask about, I used to produce a show called Wakotowin, and I asked Roxanne for the name because I wanted to produce it. I wasn't paying myself, but I wanted to produce it because there wasn't a ton of spaces for Indigenous performers to perform their art, and I wanted to cultivate a space for that. And I asked Roxanne what the best name would be for that, and they had their daughter did, or their son did drag in Vancouver, and we had a good talk about that, and really did have a lot of teachings about a lot of loving teachings. So yeah, we're building a community garden here soon, and we're hoping to have a dedicated space for a legacy for Roxanne. She's just a lovely human. But yeah, so we're getting close to time. I don't want to keep everybody too long, but does anybody have any questions you want to throw in the chat box about queer spaces, the future of things? Kenna, can you tell me more about this? I follow you on Instagram, and I see there's salsa nights, or like there's a queer, gender diverse salsa nights at the space you dance in.
Yes. So I go to Cuban Movements Dance Academy, and because I really love Latin dancing, specifically salsa. So, when we were talking about queer spaces, that was a space that I did not know would be safe. So I just went in there with my passion for dance and got to know the director, the managers, and ultimately became part of the management team also in that school. And so we created something called Salsa for Diversity and Inclusion every Tuesdays at 7:15 to 8:15, and as part of our safe space pledge. And for me, I was coming in with, it would be really important for, a queer person who loved Latin dance to be able to come in there and not have to worry about, gender roles. They could just learn the art form. But then we expanded it too, where it's like, why not expand it to also young queers or the older queers, and really anyone who wants to learn the art form. So it's growing little by little, and I'm really proud that we have been able to do that, and it's so much fun. So if any of you Love to learn a Latin dance. Come to Cuban Movements Tuesday, 7:15, and then we'll get our salsa on.
Love it. I love, yeah, because gender, I mean, like the lead and the follow. We can switch that up. It doesn't need to be a gendered thing. I definitely, it is a big one. And I do, yeah, I love salsa dance. So I definitely have to come down. But we got a question in the chat. Are there any queer spaces for musicians, music and musicians? I can't think of one off the top of my head, honestly. No. Rob?
There's just increasingly few spaces for musicians and music in the city, period. Like Edmonton's live music scene is certainly hurting, even more so now after COVID than it was before. So I don't know, Sean, do you?
I mean, I was pretty much just going to say the exact same thing. Yeah, live music venues definitely took a hit. This is probably the least amount of live music venues we've ever had. That being said, contact us. If you know a band or a DJ or someone, get them to send me or Fruit Loop a message. We're always looking for new talent, new performers, always. So, and we've got some big plans for Pride, hopefully that we can implement. So please send them our way. And as well, I was going to say, this salsa dance night sounds amazing. Please send us any kind of advertising that we can share on our socials. And that goes for all of you when it comes to any kind of events or stuff going on, youth related or family or whatever. You want an extra boost or you want an extra shout out, please just send it to us. We'll happily share it on our socials.
Thank you, Sean. Yes. I think maybe, yeah, this is what's coming out of this conversation is more cooperation and coordination amongst us would probably definitely be a next big thing, you know. I can definitely see that once we start producing things here at the McEwen Garden, I'd love to sell them maybe at Quilt Bag, and then we can partner with more events with Evo and Fruit Loops and Saphiric, and having that openness, it is what cultivates a community. And all of us aren't trying to reinvent the wheel, yo. Like I can't be a nightclub manager. So we need to all do what we do best, but share that. And yeah, if anybody wants to produce something, I started producing. It can sometimes be quite scary, but it's also a beautiful, really fun thing to cultivate, like what you think a good show would look like or what musicians you'd want on stage. So that's definitely something, like if you're looking for spaces for musicians to perform that are queer, like reach out to Rob. Like we could definitely have something going on at Evo. That'd be great.
There's a question in the chat about wheelchair accessible spaces, and yes, I know that we are certainly not, unfortunately. We have tried to get the building to do a renovation to make that happen, and they're just not willing to do it. Partly I think they're restricted to because of the age of the building. Certainly when our lease is up, I absolutely want to relocate. I've never wanted to be in this building or neighborhood less than in the last few months. And that is definitely something that we are going to be looking for is a space that's acceptable.
Yeah, I can touch on that question too a bit. When I started Sapphic Speakeasy, I did a lot of research on accessible spaces and what that means, and just kind of the things that you wouldn't think of, like just having an accessible washroom isn't enough. Having a ramp just isn't enough. Like a lot of the times, bars might have those things or a space might have those things, but then their tables are anchored down and they're too close together for somebody to even access that washroom. So there's a lot of things that goes into that. And I hope that as something that I would like to see in the future, that we can get, you know, either government support for spaces that are existing for that, because I know in the UK they do because obviously they have a lot of very beautiful older buildings, and a lot of our bars are in beautiful older buildings that they don't want to destroy to update. So they will give a certain amount of money for that update to take place. And I think that that's something that I'd love to see in the future. And then on the previous topic of kind of music and venues and stuff like that, I used to work at the Starlight Room, so I'm a huge music person, huge music fan. Kina is obviously a DJ and a musician, so if you want to put on any sort of queer music event, we are totally into it. You can send us an email or send us a DM on the Instagrams, and yeah, we definitely love to collaborate and get involved in that way. So
yeah, and we had a question in the chat. If you're interested in creating queer spaces, I'd really just suggest kind of just getting clear about your idea, getting clear about what your vision of your event, who you'd like to be involved, what you want it to look like, and then reaching out to people and see if they're interested in collaborating with you. But it is, the hardest part is probably just figuring out. I have so many ideas constantly. I like try to smash them together. It's not a good idea. Like you have to just start simple. That's the other one, starting simple, and then just small, persistent, consistent steps. Yeah. Okay, I think we're close to time. I wasn't sure if we were going to 3:30 today or not, Jessica.
Yeah, we're scheduled till 3:30, but I mean, if you feel the conversation is over, that's also fine. I had a question. Obviously, you can't have every single person on the panel in the world, but I'm wondering what other places can we spotlight for the participants that are in Edmonton that do work towards making these things happen. So yeah, the traveling tickle trunk, I'm seeing that. Thanks, Lexi, is one of those spaces. Where are some of the other ones? Maybe up and coming or whatever.
Chew. We could definitely spotlight Chew. Chew is a great spot. It's for queer youth. They are always taking donations for folks who are houseless, but also just a place for queer youth to gather. They're right beside where Buddies used to be. But they're just downtown. They're on 119th. That's a spot I just thought of off the top of my head. But yeah, yes. Also, there's the Edmonton Two-Spirit Society, EMCH, and the Edmonton Two-Spirit Society.
The Old Strathcona Youth Society is also very supportive of the QT BIPOC community, youth especially.
Old Strathcona. I gotta follow Instagram. We're going there now.
OSYS.
Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah, those are good spots too. Yeah, Spotlight does have quite a few shows. I'm sure they'd be interested in also doing some queer music shows.
Yeah. We also have Glass Bookshop, which is really important to include. Schedules just didn't really match up this time, but there's all sorts of corners in places that we don't always know of. So it's nice to share this collective knowledge too.
Naked Cyber Cafe just south of McEwen is a live music venue that they are always looking for new acts. So if someone wanted to produce a live music event, whether queer or not, and I think they might be wheelchair accessible.
I think so. I think so.
I'm pretty sure, and they've been very queer supportive for like going back decades actually. So
yeah, the chat box, the best. Love it.
And that's another one of those venues, like when I said earlier about making sure you support the queer and queer adjacent spaces that we have right now. That's another one that could really use the support. So.
Wonderful. So maybe we'll just wrap up with give everyone a chance if there's a final point that you'd like to make that you haven't had a chance to yet, or if anyone else is wanting to unmic and share anything, give a bit of space for that now, and then we can give some closing remarks and send everyone on their way.
I was just going to say on our website, we don't have all of our past community partners, but there is a list we've started of community partners that we've collaborated in the past as far as queer groups goes. There's also a handful of queer sports organizations that I believe youth can be a part of. There's Team Edmonton, there's Curling with Pride, there's Making Waves, just to name a few other queer organizations if for newcomers to Edmonton or whatnot that are wanting to get involved and like sports.
There's probably some youth groups operating out of the Pride Center too. I don't know that anyone has actually mentioned the Pride Center once in this conversation. So the Pride Center is still a thing. Like any organization, flawed and imperfect, but I mean,
people are working towards great.
Some days we're all just doing the best we can, right?
Yeah, totally. I guess the only thing that I would like to add is that I think that there's like, personally, I feel there's not really, I think the concept of a safe space is a hard thing. You can say you're a safe space, but it's more about how you handle situations than the label of a safe space. It's about, you know, the practices that go into preventing things that make people feel unsafe.
Thank you.
And then also watch out for all of the things we have going on in April, because April is a very wild month for us at Sapphic Speakeasy.
Yay, love it. Yes. Thank you everybody who's dropping the links in the chat. Jessica, I think, yeah, after this, I'll email everybody and try to get a list of directory going, because I feel like I thought like I knew a lot of places, and I definitely like hadn't thought of the sports spaces. That's like a beautiful thing and a good one for the littles too. But yeah, Tracy, I saw you're on mic.
Yeah, I just was thinking that, you know, if people have things that they want to do, like let's collaborate and come up with ideas. We've done a lot of two-spirit programming or queer programming at the Grow Center too, and it's things as simple as like beating socials. My teams have created a D&D group that meets once a month, and you know, there's so many different possibilities, but I like that you guys have me thinking bigger. It's really refreshing. Thank you. Thanks for everybody's input and energy.
Yeah, we're continuing to see some really great recommendations in the chat, which is awesome. I know there's a couple of queer climbing groups. If you're into indoor rock climbing, there's a couple of groups that are pretty active. So really, whatever's your bag, I think that there are ways to connect people. One of the things I'm taking away from this is that just the reminder of how much heart work is involved in maintaining spaces in anywhere, especially when there are numerous forces working against you. And that we have to remember that these are labors of love, and even if they are imperfect, that there's still opportunity to come together in those spaces in a good way. I'm also just reminded of that none of us are as smart or as strong as all of us, and that we need to be leaning into each other more than ever before. And especially when we're looking for different kinds of connections because of the panini, right? So how do we do that? I would love to offer to host another meeting for queer people who create and maintain queer spaces, where we could maybe talk broadly about some opportunities, even if it is just to know what's on the horizon, so that we can just continue to signal boost and just be maybe a little bit more intentional with how we support one another. So if people are interested in that, I would love to help organize that, and eventually in person. We have the space to do that on McEwen. So I would love to do that. And And as we know, one of the best ways to show up for folks is to just to attend the events that are available. So of course, I'm going to plug Pride Week. It is it's a pretty impressive slate of events we have, including this one. And I would really just like to reiterate that these are free and open to the public, and that that we are talking about these conversations in some of our other ones. Alexi has mentioned that they have a session on Thursday looking at the intersections of kink, queerness, and disability, which I think is such an important conversation. We have tomorrow evening, we have an event called Burlesque is a Revolution, where we have a group of really fantastic burlesque performers coming together to talk about how, yeah, Amelia is one of them, as you know, where we create our spaces for ourselves, and that burlesque is a great place. And then on Friday night, we have Streaming with Pride, which is produced by Fruit Loop. And it's a drag and burlesque show that it'll be streaming on Friday night. So you can get your party on in your living rooms, in your pajamas, or whatever. I just really appreciate any time we can gather and have a conversation, and thank you for those who kept their cameras on so we could see that there were real people. And thank you to you folks who took time out of your busy days to share this conversation with us. I think this is exciting stuff that we can come together and talk about. So I will, yeah, so I'm just reading the comments. Yeah, totally heart eyes for all of them. That's as far as I have today. We will be sending out a participant and panelist feedback survey, because we want to just continue getting better and offering more and more quality things for you folks. And that's the end of my spiel. I could keep talking, but I won't. And I'll just let you folks get on with your day, I suppose.
Thank you, Jessica. So awesome. So excited. Yeah, there's so much going on this week. Rob, can you also mention what's going on at EVO this week?
Yeah, so tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. at Michael Fair Park, the Edmonton Queer History Project is launching their downtown walking tour. The mayor is going to be there. I think the president of McEwen, I think Juanita from the Downtown Business Association. I was lucky to work on that project, and especially if you're interested in the history of queer spaces, there's 26 or 27 locations on this map that go back to events in the 40s. So I would certainly recommend checking that out. EVO's got a full lineup of programming. I will be honest, we have never needed the community support more than we do now. I know COVID is over, but now is when the real work is beginning. We've had to take on probably close to $250,000 in new debt to survive the last 2 years. So please come to whatever events interest you and or share them. Like we've got drag shows happening almost all the time, including a BIPOC drag show on Thursday, an all Filipino cast on Friday, and a Disney show with, I guess now, Hiwa Hamasaki from Drag Race on Sunday. And then Hosotera Toma, the first Dragula performer. She is trying to get to Edmonton right now from South Korea. She's just missed her flight in Vancouver, but she will be here tomorrow night. And a fundraiser on Saturday for a bursary for queer and trans students. So we got tons of stuff going on. So
oh yes, the Imperial Sovereign Wild Rose Court. That's also a good mention. I actually got to win that bursary, and that's another good one. Students on here, if you are queer and a student, check out that bursary. Check out
those applications will be coming out really soon, actually. Yeah. And then Gear Night on the 25th for Leatherfolk and Leather Friends. We're always trying to do stuff that represents all the aspects of the community, right? So.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Oh my gosh. Great time. Claps for ourselves. Doing the thing. Yes, I'd love to do this again. The coordination is what'll like help bring us in. The more we can work together and have conversations about these things like this, it's gonna only make us better at what we do.
Agreed. Awesome. Well, happy Pride Week, everyone. Thank you again for sharing time with us today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you to the ASL interpreters that we had today. And just like, thanks for being queer. That's it.